And I think that they all try to find their different path, and whether or not that was wanting to associate and do these reunion tours. In the last few years, I've been following Michael Nesmith on social media, and it seemed like he was trying to come to a place of solace with his life, with his career, and hopefully he was able to find that in the end.
Yeah, I don't know. Like what I had read, years earlier, like I say, when Jones was alive, and it was kind of aloof, kind of, like you say, he didn't. I don't know if he was distancing himself from it or what.
Mm-hmm.
It was strange, but and I'll leave you with this last note. In fact, did you know that Jimi Hendrix opened for them one time?
No, I didn't know that. That's hysterical.
Yeah, could you imagine them bubblegum rockers having Hendrix, blowing their mind with his music? He did it for about a week or two, and then he got him out of here. So, anyway, be well, and hope you have a good show.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dave. Have a great night. Be healthy, happy, and safe this weekend. You know what I always say. Take care. Let's take a break here, and we'll be right back after this with your calls. 773-763-9278 is the number to call. 773-763-WCPT. And you can call or text us to that number. You're listening to Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez on WCPT 820.
A Better Life with Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
When is the last time you stopped to really enjoy a meal? I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, CNN's chief medical correspondent. Too often we stuff ourselves with breakfast while running out the door, do lunch at work, we type with one hand and eat with the other, or at home for dinner we're trying to play with our kids, doing chores and watching TV at the same time. What if you slow down? You try to eat more mindfully. Use all your senses to experience and enjoy your food. Science shows that it will help with weight loss or stability, anxiety and stress reduction, normalized eating habits, and relief even from irritable bowel syndrome and gastrointestinal symptoms. Try and do this today. Just hit pause, try to be in the moment, and you don't necessarily have to do this at every meal every day, but start small, one meal a week, even just a few minutes at the beginning of a meal. Just focus on your sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. I'm Dr. Sanjay Gupta, helping you live a better life.
Doesn't your family deserve the best? Eggland's Best Eggs. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Give you and your family more. More delicious, farm-fresh taste. Plus, superior nutrition. Compared to ordinary eggs, Eggland's Best provides 6 times more vitamin D, 10 times more vitamin E, and 25% less saturated fat. These are no ordinary times, so why choose an ordinary egg? Only Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
At Napa, we keep things moving. If it has wheels and an engine, we help keep it on the road. And if it's on the road, we have parts for it. And if you need a part, you can get it fast, like same-day pickup or next-day delivery fast. At Napa, when we're not thinking about cars, we're thinking about the people who drive them. Because when it comes to serving you and our community, our motor never quits. That's Napa know-how. Same-day pickup and next-day delivery available at participating stores and on in-stock items only.
You're listening to WCPT 820, and we are driving it home. That's a little bit of music from our friend Chris Jones. You can go to chrisjonesgrass.com. We're taking your calls to find out what's on your mind tonight on this rainy Friday evening. And joining us from Chicago is Tom. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind?
Hi, Patty. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy it's Friday. What do you want to tell us?
Good. Me too.
Yep.
Well, hey, I thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted to let you know that I've been in conversations with the Alderwoman, Samantha Nugent, up in the 39th Ward, and her team, Erica, and they just wanted to pass on the knowledge that the 17th District officers in Beat 1712 specifically are going to be doing a roll call this Monday at 6 p.m. at the corner of Kilbourne and Argyle, and are just looking to show support to our men and ladies, or men and women in uniform, and the great hard work that they're putting in, especially in this December month, and to let the community get out there, show support, and do whatever we can to keep our neighborhood safe and on the willing.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I know that a lot of folks are concerned. Tonight, the Alderman Gardner is having an event at Copernicus Center, and it's easy for people to turn a lot of these things into political moments to sort of be opportunistic. But I get the feeling. Look, for tonight, a lot of people are on either side of this. I'm disappointed that there isn't more being done to support the men and women who are out there trying to do the best they can. And it sounds like that's your take on what's happening on Monday.
Yeah, I think that right now the city is seeing all kinds of challenges all over the area, from north to south, east and west. But the communities themselves need to get out. A lot of districts are getting out on the streets and being visible. But we need continued support for all the neighbors, for everybody to be, feel secure in their neighborhood, secure from carjackings or shootings or any other kind of, crime that's going on. It's just kind of getting a little out of control. And the more we step in, the more support they get, the better the alternative, the outcomes are.
I appreciate that. Thanks for giving us a heads up again. That's the 39th Ward. Samantha Nugent's the alderwoman over there. It's a 17th District roll call at 6 p.m. on Monday at Kilbourne and Argyle. I appreciate that, Tom. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. All the best. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. And we've got let's see who we've got on the hold here. Steve. Steve from the Gold Coast. Hey, Steve. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. And I wanted to echo what the last caller was referring to with regard to crime and what it means going forward. There's sort of two schools of thought. Is this a sort of hiccup, an anomaly that's a function of COVID like so many other things? And once things get back to normal, perhaps we'll have some degree of normalcy with regard to crime, or is this part of a long-term trend?
Right.
Not just in Chicago and nationally. And the thing is, we've been here before. Those people who remember the 1960s, I'm a little bit too young. I wasn't born until 68, but I study these sort of things. And what happened was that you did have a push to make the criminal justice system more egalitarian, more fair. Well, at the same time, you saw an explosion of crime. And for all sorts of reasons, you had dynamic shifts in the culture and much more permissiveness with regard to drugs and sexuality and so forth. It's really hard to nail down any one thing, but I would argue it's a perfect storm that created the epidemic of crime that started in the mid-1960s and really took off in the 70s and 80s and peaked in the early 90s. And then to defy everyone's sort of capacity to predict anything, it fell off a cliff in terms of the decline in crime. I mean, it was amazing how fast crime declined in America.
What would you say? What would you say, in your opinion, were the contributing factors to the decline? Do you think improved, incomes and availability of housing, or do you think it was? I mean, Reagan came in,
there's a number of. This is still debated amongst the scholarly community. I mean, many have argued that, for instance, it's not a coincidence that when Roe v. Wade became the law of the land, that those unwanted children that were not born, specifically male children, poor male children, that would have come of age exactly at the time when young men start to commit crime and enter that world, did not, obviously, that didn't manifest itself because they were never born, and crime declined as a result. That if you want to find out where the problem, you're probably old enough to remember the Murphy Brown issue, and Dan Quayle, berating the writers of Murphy Brown because she had a child out of wedlock.
Right.
When social scientists were saying to themselves, okay, the problem in America is not a anchorwoman making a multi-million-dollar salary raising a child on her own. The problem is a woman with no income trying to raise 3 children on her own. And that's the problem that creates crime, because it wasn't likely that Murphy Brown's child was going to go out and carjack anybody. So Dan Quayle was sort of off base on that one. Yep. But I think that there's a big difference today, and that is that unlike in the 60s and 70s when you had what was called white flight, middle class, upper middle class, everybody was leaving New York, Chicago, every other big city, and heading for the suburbs, today's generation, your generation and mine, we, beginning in the 1990s, decided we wanted to live in cities. We didn't want to go to the suburbs, get married, and then go out there and raise our children and die. Instead, we wanted to live our lives in urban America, enjoy life, get married a little later, raise our children, and then maybe you might go to the suburbs. But guess what? A lot of those people then, after they had the empty nest thing going on, they decide to come right back down to Manhattan or downtown Chicago and buy a condo, because they want to enjoy the restaurants, the entertainment, everything that a city has to offer. And I think that that's the big difference, that you're not going to see Chicago or New York or other cities turn into Detroit, because people of our generation simply don't want to leave. We don't want to go to the suburbs. And we're right, and businesses have invested, and real estate is so valuable. I think we'll do anything that it takes to salvage our cities. And I think that's the big distinction between the 1960s and today. Everybody was fleeing then. Today, people are not anxious to leave cities.
You put a lot in there, and there's a couple things, but one I want to go back to, which is Roe v. Wade, and I have heard this theory before. When you have fewer unwanted children, we often talk about there aren't exceptions. For example, in these Texas laws, this legislation that after a heartbeat is detected, but what is it, almost 6 weeks? And by the way, that's a whole nother bucket of conversation, because the sound of a heartbeat may also be the electrical activity coming from the equipment. So that's neither here nor there. But we often talk about unwanted pregnancies for women who have been raped or are the victims of incest, and we say what about them? But I read all these women are sharing their stories in response to the Supreme Court's debate last week. And one woman wrote something. She goes, "Look, I appreciate that all of you are writing your stories about why you had an abortion, that you were that you were poor, that you were raped, all these things." And she goes, "Look, I was 19. I was in college. I knew I never wanted to have children. It was never in my future. It wasn't what I wanted to do." She said, "I'm 54 years old now. I had that abortion and I never regretted it, and I don't have kids now. I've lived my life the way I wanted to, the way I dreamt it." And that's something that Terry Cosgrove was trying to impress upon us when we were talking with him. He's the CEO of Personal Pack, is that it is the ability of someone to determine their own future. It's that autonomy. And I think that goes into what you're talking about as well, because you have this entire population of women who weren't forced to do something, and that affects their mental health, their economic health, everybody, and everyone in their community as well. So I thought that was interesting that you brought that up. Mm-hmm.
And if I might, at this point, for people who want to, I don't want to reduce this issue too much, because the fact is that you can actually have a significant part of the population that have children that are born out of wedlock. And Northern Europe demonstrates this. The Scandinavian countries actually have a higher out-of-wedlock birth rate than we do. However, their antisocial behavior rate and their crime rate is much lower. Why? Because there are strong social safety nets in those societies. So that's the difference. What Republicans and conservatives want to say is you're forced to have a child if you get pregnant. But by the way, that's where our concern ends. And it's not a surprise that when that mother who can't be at home, has to work, can't take care of her children, those children may end up on the streets doing something like what happened in Chicago last weekend. And that's exactly where a young 12-year-old got shot, because her mother didn't know where she was, and it turns out she was downtown. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say I care about children, but I only care about them right until they're born. And then after that, they're just on their own.
Absolutely. I think that it becomes maddening when we don't, again, support families, like you're saying. And the other thing is that there are so many people that want to say, well, why doesn't a woman just give the baby up for adoption? Because then you are telling a woman she must be an incubator. She is no, it's not.
Absolutely.
It's not.
I mean, who in heaven's name is going to walk around a college campus pregnant and stay in school with all of that going on in their life? I mean, I'm sorry, it's just not that easy. Men have never had a child. That's why we think that this is the solution. It's a ridiculous answer.
Right. And here's the thing. When I was delivering Griffin, I crashed. My pulse ox, everything started dropping. My blood pressure, which means that if I had not been in the hospital, I may have died. And I know that there are a lot of people who, have safe at-home births. I am not one of those people that could have done that. And my second child, Declan, needed immediate care. He had to be put on life support. It is not something to be entered into lightly, to think, oh, well, you just get pregnant and you just carry the baby to term and give it up for adoption. I'm not your incubator. It's not that safe. And there is such poor maternal health care in this country that it is appalling to me that people demand that of women. Anyway, now I'm on a tear.
Absolutely. And last point, the right loves to romanticize our past. The notion that if we could only go back to the 50s, and if you got pregnant, okay, then basically the father was obligated to marry you, and then you just went on and had a happy life. Well, that was a lot of nonsense, as we all know. The reality is that you didn't have a happy life. Is that you had a miserable life, and a child grew up in a miserable environment. That is not the answer.
Exactly. I agree completely. Thank you so much, Steve, for your thoughts tonight. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again soon. And then we have Jay to round out this half hour. Hi, Jay. What's on your mind?
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I just had an epiphany about why is it so big right now, all of a sudden, to have this Roe v. Wade argument. when 30 years ago they were pushing birth control.
Who was, though? The right certainly. The right has never pushed birth control because friends of mine who I went to college with would talk about how, if sex is only for procreation, which I don't want to call out my friend Tom. Let's call him Tom because that's his name. But we used to have arguments about abortion, about birth control, and he would say that he was very staunchly Catholic. That the only reason that you should have sex was for procreation. And I was like, come on, so you mean that you don't reach a climax, that's the only reason? That I find that really hard to believe, because then you have to go down that rabbit hole of masturbation.
We just been X-rated.
That's all right. No, we didn't. These are all terms that we can use on the air. On the air, but I'm like,
still PG?
Yes, that's still PG. Yeah, it's still PG. But I was like, Tom, tell me you're not, throwing, your progeny across the room on a sock. Back down, because those are the arguments I would have. So
to piggyback off of that, with the Catholic Church, and from my understanding is where did orphanages come from?
Right,
Those were the priests.
Yep.
Having intercourse with the nuns, and instead of sending them they'll put them away so no one could find out exactly who fathered and who had the children.
Yeah, we're talking about going all the way back to Europe. There were in fact orphanages that were because the priests were having physical relationships when they shouldn't have, because nowhere in the Bible does it say that a priest can't get married. But if you're going to force people into this mindset of controlling and suppression, it's going to manifest in ways that are going to be harmful to themselves and to people in the community. Yep.
And the child more than anybody.
Yep. Exactly.
More than anybody.
I got to run to a break. We're gonna talk again soon. If you want to call,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Jay. Have a wonderful weekend. Coming up after this, we are going to talk to Deputy Director of the National Economic Council of the White House, David Kamin. After this, and we'll continue our conversation on Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez, WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT Willow Springs is powered by ComEd. Lower your energy bills and reduce your carbon footprint with the ComEd Energy Efficiency Program.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
The inbound side of the Eden's Lock, solid from Tower down to the Kennedy Merge. Lake Cook Road down to the junction, 1 hour 21 on the Flint. Kennedy inbound bumper to bumper out of the O'Hare terminals all the way into the circle. O'Hare into downtown, hour 23. Half hour of that in from the junction. Outbound, 48 to the Split, 23 in the Express, hour and 15 out to O'Hare. Eyes an hour either way's a parking lot. Between 390 and the Circle, 1 hour and 23 minutes. Stevenson inbound locked up from 355 to Kedzie, 355 on into DeSable Lakeshore Drive. That's an hour and 3. Outbound's an hour and 12. The Dan Ryan in from 95th at 33 minutes, hitting the brakes at 31st. Outbound in 45. That's traffic. I'm Mary DeBadges.
Get in the holiday spirit at Lowe's Winterfest and save $30 on a Google Nest Smart Thermostat. Was $129.99, now $99.99. While supplies last. Valid through 12/26, U.S. only.
This is a WCPT moment in labor. When Serena Williams won her title at the Tennis Grand Slam tournament, we know she gets the same prize money as her male counterpart. However, prior to 1973, that wasn't always the case. When Billie Jean King captured her first Wimbledon title in 1966, she was surprised to find out that the winner of the men's tournament received £2,000, while she only received £750. After being unable to find any tournaments for women, King and 8 other women formed their own tournament, the Virginia Slims Invitational, where each woman was paid $1 before posing for the famous picture of them each holding up their dollar, with the caption, "Contract Pros." While the move was bold, the pay discrepancies continued. King threatened to boycott the 1973 U.S. Open unless the women were paid the same as the men. Thanks to a grant from Band Deodorant, both the men and women's singles would take home $25,000. Despite the progress at the U.S. Open, it wouldn't be until 1984 that the Australian Open would execute equal pay, followed by the French Open in 2006, and finally Wimbledon in 2007. This has been a WCPT moment in labor. We're fighting for your rights.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We are so thrilled to introduce our next guest to WCPT 820 Driving It Home with Patti Vasquez. Joining us is David Kamin, who is the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council at the White House. David, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm pretty good. We're heading into the holidays. We're going to be gathering with our friends and family, and all of us in our lives have people who believe they are experts on the economy, on inflation, on debt ceilings, on the deficit. And in my entire life, I've never had the opportunity to talk to someone like you who might give us the tools in which to explain why President Biden deserves every bit of credit for what is happening and going to happen in our economy as moving forward and improving the lives of everyone. What should we be talking about with the people who we disagree with in many ways?
So, when the president took office, we were facing a once-in-a-century pandemic that had led to, millions losing their jobs, and obviously, the kind of economic and health tragedies we saw so much over the last months and years. When the president came to office, putting forward a plan to address that, the American Rescue Plan, as well as a plan to address the COVID crisis we face. It's why he was so focused on, getting shots into arms through the COVID vaccine program. It was why he was so focused on getting Americans relief through the American Rescue Plan and supporting the economy going into this year. The result has been real progress. Right now, the unemployment rate is 4.2%. We've fell to that unemployment rate years faster than many expected when the president was taking office. Just yesterday, we learned that unemployment insurance claims fell to their lowest level in 50 years. When you compare us across the world, we're the only leading economy in which the economy and also disposable incomes for Americans was higher as of July than before the pandemic. Now, we also face real challenges. One of those challenges, for instance, is prices and the kind of supply chain bottlenecks we're seeing here and around the world, because it really is a global problem. The president and this administration have been really focused on that, too. Getting down energy prices. We're now beginning to see those results right now, and prices at the pump, and those prices should be falling. Beginning to see a reduction in backlogs at our ports, and that should be translating into prices for Americans looking ahead. And then finally, we're also really focused on the long term and making sure that we continue to grow the economy, raise people's incomes, and address prices. That's among the reasons why the president fought so hard for the bipartisan infrastructure law and those investments, and now the kinds of investments that are part of the Build Back Better Act and that will help address prices and key challenges Americans face, like healthcare and childcare, looking ahead.
See, and you've given us so much good news, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing this with our listeners. Again, for anyone just joining us, we are talking to Deputy Director of the National Economic Council, David Kamin. I want to make sure that people really appreciate the good things that are happening, because you just said that unemployment's the lowest it's been in 50 years. That's good news. But yet there's a poll that says a lot of Americans believe the economy is in poor condition, and they're connecting that to the annual inflation rate, which still boggles me that people feel like they're experts on inflation and the economy. But the inflation rate, which is at its highest since 1982, we know that you are addressing that everyone is addressing that in the Build Back Better. How does it address that specifically?
Sure. First, it's really important to look at what is driving those challenges right now that we're having with prices. So even as, the economy has been making tremendous progress and unemployment insurance claims fell to their lowest level in 5 decades, we are seeing, and Americans are seeing, and it's understandable why they're frustrated with the kind of price increases that, cut at, that really affect people's pocketbooks. Now, that's happening around the world right now. It's a global issue. Many countries around the world are facing higher prices. That's in large part because of the pandemic that we're right now exiting from. And so we're really focused on addressing some of those immediate challenges we face. That includes, getting down energy prices. That's why the president announced, a release of 50 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And working in parallel with countries around the world, we've begun to see energy prices come down. It's why he's been so focused on addressing supply chain bottlenecks. We've been working with America's ports, and we're beginning to see real progress there. It's why he's been so focused on making sure that companies aren't taking advantage of the situation, that we're addressing any anti-competitive practices that could drive up profits at the expense of prices. But it's also about looking ahead. We need to be addressing these kinds of log jams in our economy, in the not just now, but in the years ahead. That was a key part of the bipartisan infrastructure law he signed into place. We're already seeing that come into action, for instance, helping to address investments in America's ports. But it's also a key part of the Build Back Better Act. That act helps address key costs Americans face: prescription drug costs, child care costs, health care costs. It also helps expand key parts of the economy where we just need more supply for Americans. We need more housing supply. Americans face housing costs which are too high, and part of that is addressing affordability, and part of it is building more housing, and this act would invest in that, which is why the Build Back Better Act does also address and help reduce those kinds of inflationary pressures over the long term.
See, this is the thing, is that I know that you are busy and have a tight schedule. I would love to talk to you more about this, because I really, look, I got a D in economics. I learned a lot about guns and butter. They smashed it all together with micro and macro. So I would really appreciate more of your insight when time allows. Would you be able to join us again sometime in the future?
I'd be happy to join again.
Oh, I appreciate that so much. I wish you the best of holiday seasons. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you're doing, and everyone at the White House, to make sure that Americans have better and happier lives going forward.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I'm Dr. Andrea Russo, a cardiologist. Maybe you're waiting to talk to your doctor right now. But if you're having an irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain, shortness of breath, fatigue, or lightheadedness, don't wait. This could be a serious condition like atrial fibrillation, which can make you about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. If you're having these symptoms, don't wait. Talk to a doctor by phone, online, or in person.
Brought to you by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Are you a parent of a 2 to 7-year-old? Listen closely for an exciting free radio offer. By now, you've probably heard of ABC Mouse, the award-winning and revolutionary online learning program that's changing the lives of early learners everywhere.
ABC Mouse is like a little one-on-one teacher. It has helped her so much.
Designed by teachers and early childhood learning experts, ABC Mouse seamlessly aligns with what your child is already learning in school. And with over 7,000 learning activities and more than 650 lessons, it's the most comprehensive early learning site on earth.
I have been teaching for 13 years, and I've never seen a program like ABC Mouse. It encompasses science, math, reading, social studies.
It's just endless what they can learn on ABC Mouse. I've always had to use 20 websites, and now I can just use one.
Right now, we're offering a special radio promo to try it free for a month. But you have to go to abcmouse.com/radio to claim your free month. That's abcmouse.com/radio, abcmouse.com/radio.
Sponsored by Age of Learning.
If you have been financially affected by the COVID pandemic, then this message is for you. Are you among the many folks who have lost their jobs, or if you've been furloughed, or working from home at a reduced pay? If you have credit card debt and cannot make your monthly payments, we at Debt Fix Pros can help. Call us to see how we can reduce your interest rates and lower your monthly payments. If you are struggling with credit card debt, we can help. Call 800-707-1097. That's 800-707-1097.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Friday evening. And I know that people probably have a lot of plans for the weekend. Let me know what's going on in your world as we head into the holidays. How are you celebrating? How are your offices handling holiday celebrations? That conversation with the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council of the White House, David Kamin, joined us, and I'm hoping we can have him back, because I would love to ask him a lot more questions, but he's a pretty busy guy, trying to fix the economy. That can't be easy. Jay wanted to share some thoughts on that conversation. Hey, Jay, what's on your mind?
All right, I actually wanted to share thoughts on the past conversation you had regarding to the low unemployment
Yes.
Rate. And my question was going to be to the gentleman you had on is that everyone can talk about the unemployment rate being so low now. And I really just want to get this question answered. What job is that that's driving the unemployment rate so low? As Donald Trump stated, my African-American men have been in the best financial unemployment position in 40 years. I just want to know what job did he create? What job did Trump create to make that possible? I think it's nothing as simple as just Uber.
With
people driving Uber, you can't discriminate against people.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a license, you can do it without a background. You don't have to really go through stringent interviews. There's no nepotism or favoritism or racism in it. And that's exactly what it is. That's what I believe. I mean, and I don't like anyone else's thought on that.
Well, I think not just Uber, but you really lock into something that is pertinent to this conversation, because the gig economy, not just driving for Uber, but look, I've been an independent contractor for 27 years up until, I worked for WGN, so I had a steady income, and then I started working for the state. But being an independent contractor, you're kind of at the whims. It's employment, and you can kind of, leave or work where you want to if you have that opportunity. But I think that you strike on something that's important. You don't have to, you create your own opportunities in many ways. If people, and it's hard to live like that. It's a very scary space to not have regular health insurance. I would look at my calendar and go, oh boy, maybe I'm not a comic in 6 months because I have nothing booked then. It's daunting. Same thing with Uber. Look, they were vulnerable to the pandemic. People weren't getting into cars for a long time. They weren't going anywhere. And I'm guessing it's still down because people aren't necessarily going back to the office when they might have used Uber to go there or go to gather in bars and restaurants and things like that too. So while they wouldn't necessarily be claiming unemployment, or they could, I think depending on how much you're earning, what kind of steady income you have, you can still apply for unemployment as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Being an independent contractor, though, wouldn't you need to have, as you stated, for the last 27 years?
Yeah.
Did you have to have initially some investment money in that?
Well, because
a lot of Uber people don't.
Right. Uber. No, I didn't. Just to do stand-up comedy. The only thing I had to cover were my travel expenses. For example, I worked a lot through all of South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, all the fun places, Jay. And most, but I had to cover the most was really just my travel getting there. And often I was making as much as it cost me to get there. Like, for example, for 2 nights in Minot, North Dakota in the late 1990s, I was making $175, and my ticket there on Amtrak to Minot was $119. These are things that you remember, isn't it? So, and then and then you count in how much it cost me for food, or they gave me hotel, but generally it was more like having a graduate program. Like I was paying in order to get better at what I was doing.
Absolutely, for the experience.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't pay for the experience.
No, you can't. And it's hard to explain to young comics and performers, that people often ask, like, how did you do it? And it was like, I can't create that model for anybody else. It was also the 90s. I mean, if I did drive somewhere, man, I had to print out the Google Maps or MapQuest. It wasn't Google Maps. It was MapQuest. And I'm driving with these sheets of paper, and, turn left, oh yeah. And there were places where I was driving through Iowa. I'm like, am I on Bob's Road now? Where am I? Oh, I remember being in South Dakota.
It's possible for most people now.
Oh, there's no.
Person wouldn't even know how to read a map. Random Alley.
Yes.
You probably know that by heart.
Oh yeah. No, my husband used to buy me laminated maps too, so that I would have for the states that I was driving. They would break out in like Des Moines or the bigger cities, so I could get a better view of the streets, the roads. Yeah, I was a comic starting in 1995 out there, humping it, is what we say. We're called road warriors, just going out and performing. And there was a comedy club in the lobby of a hotel in Fargo, North Dakota. I mean, these are the things. Yes. Yeah.
Well, you persevered, and it all worked out for you.
It did. I am so grateful. I have a lot of great memories, and I didn't like driving alone. It was scary, and I can I tell you a secret, Jay? When I drive for a long period of time, I get sleepy. Like after 4 hours or so, I just get the road. It's monotonous, no matter how much music I have, or what I'm eating or drinking, or the windows down. So I would pull over and sleep in church parking lots. Or I remember one time I was in Nebraska. There was a windstorm, and I had rented a Jeep Cherokee Albuquerque, and man, that thing was just all over the road. And it was like 2 a.m, and I thought, well, if I get a hotel, I don't have enough money to get this hotel. It's going to cost me like $50. So I slept in a truckers. I slept between a bunch of truckers. I just figured I don't know why I thought that would be safe, but I was just taking my chances. But that brings us back to what you're talking about, the gig economy. Independent contractors, there are a lot of us, or, whether they're writers or artists, a lot of people who are consultants, they come in as independent contractors. And there are a lot of ways to make money, and I think that, I don't know how they capture that with the, how jobs are doing. And again, with unemployment too, it's what's the quality of job? How many jobs are people working? When they talk about the massive quitting from a lot of people, there are numbers that show that they're moving into jobs that were paying better, more steady. I hated waiting tables. Have you ever waited tables, Jay? Jay? Oh, did I lose Jay?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And again, I appreciate anyone that's going through that for comedy, because that's really the only levity we have at this point, besides overeating.
Yeah, it's Go ahead.
On a way to just relieve ourselves from the strenuous activities of the daily, grueling lives of hardworking people.
Yeah.
We need that.
Yeah, it's a lot. I was asking, have you ever waited tables, Jay?
Oh no, I've done bill collections though.
Oh, bill collections. Oh, that's not fun. How long did you do that for?
Too long.
Oh.
When it was paying well.
Okay. Oh.
It paid over 75, 80 grand a year.
What?
That's before the Privacy Act.
Whoa.
Bush came out the Privacy Act, and you couldn't like scam people and say, hey, we're going to take you to court, and we're going to sue you, all the good stuff you tell people.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Yeah, I'm okay with you not being.
Those days, the 90s.
Oh boy. Well,
It was terrible. They were terrible. Bill collectors were like some of the most unscrupulous people that I've ever worked with. I mean, it was a way of making money.
Right, but I think that we don't teach in schools how to be responsible, right? We always have this thing about, the government just spends their money, and if I ran my house budget like that, and I, we would be in trouble, and my house, we wouldn't be able to keep a roof over our home, over our heads, but we don't really teach children how to, what it means to have a credit card, what the small print is, what it means to carry a balance and have to accrue interest, or I'm terrible. I mean, I'm one of those people where I kind of have a vague idea. That's the one thing I would say about apps is that I get an alert every time there's a deposit or a withdrawal from my checking account. Now I know I have a better idea of what's going on with my money. But before that, I was terrible. Like for me, it caused a lot of anxiety to like try to sit down and see how many checks I wrote. I mean, some people are very disciplined, and I'll be very honest. It's not something that I grew up understanding at all. Like my mom's listening, so forgive me, mommy, but my parents fought a lot about money. So for me, money just meant stress. My dad and my mom would argue. My mom would ask, where's the money for the groceries? Where's the money for the rent? And my mom was the primary breadwinner. And I think that's part of where I come from. Like people always say, I'll tell you something, Jay. My dad was disappointed that I was marrying my boyfriend, Steve. When Steve asked him for my hand in marriage, my dad goes, well, she ain't got any money, right? And then my dad turned to me and he goes, I swear to God, Jay, he said this to me in front of my now husband, Steve, who I've been married to for 21 years. He goes, so that kid Jason never called you back, huh? Because Jason had money and my dad wanted me to marry rich.
and he still remembers that.
Yeah, my dad. Yeah. Oh, yeah. My ex-boyfriend Jason, his dad was like the vice president of Sprint, and they flew me to Kansas to go visit family when I was in college.
He considers that the one that got away.
He did. My mom has a different one that she considered that got away. She liked Derek a lot. There's another one named Tom who's now like he and his wife. Not that I follow this stuff on Facebook, but he and his wife just bought this $1.5 million house in Scottsdale, Arizona. But here's the thing. I look back. I made all the right choices. I am married to an incredible man who is the best partner I could have possibly chosen. He is a father that knows no bounds for his love for his boys. Somebody asked me the other day, he's amazing. People ask me, like, how do you do everything you do? 100%. Well, I would say it's almost entirely both my mom and my husband, but my husband carries the heaviest load when it comes to making sure all of us are safe.
Well, I feel that same way. On the opposite side, my wife is like that. So I know how you can. I can see how you can appreciate something like that.
Oh, yeah.
It's the better half of yourself.
Exactly. Yes. Hey, by the way, you know what, Jay? That was the name of the sitcom that we sold. I actually sold a sitcom based on my life in 2015. You can Google it, Patti Vasquez. It was called The Better Half, and it wasn't. Okay. And it was a sitcom about. It went to script with ABC Studios. It never went to shooting the pilot, but it was a really fun story about moving in with my parents, which my husband and I did in 2001. And my dad was a bit of a con artist. My dad was a cab driver who the bit was my dad just had a way about him. He survived the Great Depression. He just knew his way around. He knew how to take shortcuts when it came to making money. And my mom was a computer programmer for the federal government. And like I said, she's why we have a roof over our heads, because she bought this 2-flat, and that's where we continue to live with our boys. And my father sadly passed away in 2001. But it is entirely based. The story was about their relationship, my relationship with Steve. Again, I was a primary breadwinner. My mom was a primary breadwinner, and sort of this multi-generational women. Who was the better half? The husbands, the wives, and sort of that push and pull of who plays what role in a family.
Well, believe it or not, that's what I was in school for before I decided to do bill collecting. I was in school for computer programming.
Really? She was
taking my last courses, as a matter of fact.
Yeah?
I learned that you could make more money through your bonuses and collections. And you're in a room with a bunch of unscrupulous people. You can do just about whatever you want to do, and it's not structured. And computer programming is so structured. I'm like, hey, this sounds good over here. Let me do that.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I got stuck in it. And ended up trying to go back to computers, and, the rest is history. Computers took off. By the time I went back, I didn't understand a circuit from Windows. I didn't know what they were talking about.
Well, my mom...
That was my experience with computers and programming. I know absolutely nothing to this day about the computers and networking and Windows and that stuff.
I'll tell you an interesting little thing that happened just in this last year during the pandemic. My mother was a COBOL programmer, which means she did all the zeros and ones. I mean, it was programming back to the 1970s. Yeah. So she worked on Y2K.
COBOL. It's now C now.
Well, that's the thing is, right. What was that?
Yeah. COBOL is now C. C++, same format.
Right. So the problem...
COBOL as well.
So she worked for the federal government. She literally worked on Y2K. She was considered an essential worker. And then they offered her a buyout quite a while back because their incentive was they were going to eliminate COBOL in all the programs for the federal government. But guess what they didn't do? Yeah. They did not transition to more advanced technology or up-to-date technology. So when the pandemic hit and they were overwhelmed with all these requests for unemployment insurance, a lot of states shut down because all the COBOL programmers are in their 70s and 80s, and they bought them out and forced them out of work.
Well, Patty, here's one thing I did learn from a little short story that I did programming and was in computers, that America does not spend money on its technology.
No.
Aside from rockets and weapons and missiles,
yes,
it comes down to programming and even when it comes down to cyber. They're so far behind, and unfortunately, in cyber attack, and it only looks like that from this standpoint because we get so attacked so heavily. I'm sure they're doing a lot of attacking in China and other countries.
Yeah.
But Chase Bank should not get hacked. Major banks should not be getting hacked by financial institutions should not be getting hacked by China and Nigeria and smaller countries. So we don't want to invest enough in cyber.
Yep, we need to be focused on that. I agree. Thank you so much for calling, Jay. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Patty.
Have a great weekend. And we're going to wrap it up here. I want to remind everybody it is Friday night, which means we're going live with Whiskey and a Cookie on my Facebook page. It's the Patty V Show, PattiV Show on Facebook. I'll be joined by Elliot Serrano and Adam Seltzer and Esmeralda Leon. We won't have Scott Stantis tonight because he is en route to Chicago. I get to see Scott Stantis from the Chicago Tribune this weekend. I'm excited about that. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for everything, Lady B. And thank you, Matt. And also thank you to the Deputy Director of the National Economic Council, David Kamin. And I want to remind you one more time, our friend Tom, who called about that CAPS meeting, the roll call meeting for the 39th Ward at the 17th District. It's going to be at 6 p.m. on Monday at Kilbourne and Argyle. Be well, everyone. Take care, and wish you the very best. We'll be back on Monday. The Devil's Advocate is up next. Bye.
I'm Dr. Andrea Russo, a cardiologist. Maybe you're waiting to talk to your doctor right now. But if you're having an irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain,